Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project. Are you ready?
All right, and here we are, the Eric McKenna Project. This is show number 5, and as I sit across the table, I'm absolutely flabbergasted. I'm going to sound like a big fan at the moment, but I want to get this out. When I sat and I designed this show a couple months ago, we quickly put it together. One of the things I wanted to do was get our audience great content, and we wanted to speak with movers and shakers is an overblown topic, an overblown description. We wanted dynamic and accomplished people in their fields. And the one man that I had befriended on social media years ago, but had never been in the same room with you, James, is you. And I thought immediately, when I started this show, I was going to reach out to you. I have Mr. James Houk, Pittsburgh's own James Houk, and designer, painter, fighter, sports trainer. I can go on and on. You have the most dynamic resume, my friend, and thank you for giving us some time today and coming in.
Oh, thanks.
I appreciate it.
So nice to meet you in person.
Oh, absolutely.
I feel like we've been friends for years already.
Yeah, that social media will do that to you, right? And some of our same circle as well, too. James and I talked a little bit off camera. We're just this is like all the shows, just do a long form conversation, and we're just gonna have an opportunity for James to share a bit of your story with all of the audience here, and I'm sure a lot here in Pittsburgh. But you are a hometown boy, right? Hometown native.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't always in Brookline, though, right?
Yeah, I was born, in my real early years were in the West End.
Okay.
And then right before high school, I moved to the South Hills and Mount Lebanon. But you can't kind of get the city out of you, so I almost right away every day would start walking over to Brookline so I could feel more comfortable being back with my city folk. And
got it.
I started boxing pretty young, and so I would be there boxing every day. And
now that was in Brookline. Mm-hmm. And what was the name of the?
It was a Brookline Boxing Club.
Okay.
Legendary.
How old were you when you started the interest in boxing?
I was 13 when I started.
Oh wow, that's young.
Yeah,
that's young. You just had the bug.
Yeah. And that's probably why my wife says I have brain damage now too. So
I'm sure she
can always fall back on
I'm sure that's debatable. Was there a trainer that got you into it, or was there someone of influence at that time that kind of pushed you in that direction?
Kind of a real famous. I kind of went on my own just because I always wanted to learn since I was very young. But I was really lucky that the coach there was his name is Chuck Senft. He's a real famous guy. And,
okay.
He really took care of me, and
Wow, I mean,
fed it more and more.
Well, I was looking at some of your bio and the boxers you've trained with, and it's just amazing to me. But we'll get into that. What high school did you go to?
I went to Mount Lebanon High School.
Okay, so you weren't really a city boy then, in terms of your high school years.
Well,
but Brookline drew you back, right?
Yeah, I wish I could say, like, I'm slightly, not embarrassed, but Mount Lebanon was a great school. And I remember
used to live in Mount Lebanon.
I remember when I went there, it was actually ranked, I think, in the top 5 in the country. It was a really, really good school.
Absolutely.
But I just, it was kind of strange because we were always really poor when I was young, and then my mom remarried right before I went to high school.
Okay.
So I used to always say it was like I moved to the Magic Kingdom. Then I'm going to Mount Lebanon with all the rich kids, and it was really difficult for me. And it still is, actually. I never really felt quite like I belonged there, but it's okay. Sorry, Mount Lebanon, I love you, Mount Lebanon.
No, of course we love everybody. I can relate to a certain degree. I lived in Mount Lebanon. I inherited a property there, and the long and the short of it was I started that guitar bit concern, and I was on a very prestigious street in Mount Lebanon that I probably didn't belong on, and I used to come home with massive guitars in and out of my house. I think the neighbors thought I was crazy. Not your typical activity, obviously, on that street, but great people up there. I have good memories as well, Mount Lebanon. Talk a little bit about the boxing end of it, and then you have a pretty prestigious military career, too, and it's obviously something you're comfortable talking about as well.
It's funny. I'd love to talk to you about it. The military part is kind of strange, because it's I've never really talked about it very much because it's kind of hard for people to relate to it. Like I was on a hostage rescue team, not officially special forces, although I was trained special forces. We weren't under special forces. We were almost like a civilian team. We actually I actually worked with the FBI hostage rescue team, and we trained together all the time, and we did different missions together, and civilian and military, and it's so we did the craziest things that it's sort of hard to it's like girls, they're not going to really understand it. And guys, a lot of times are, it's hard because guys sometimes get jealous or they don't really, you know what I mean? It sounds like you're bragging about something macho you did.
We have all afternoon, buddy.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm very, very proud of it.
Sure.
But
absolutely.
a lot of it was somewhat secretive and kind of hard for people to understand. So I never have really had the opportunity to talk about it too much, but I'd be glad to talk about it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So, was it the Army?
Yes.
Okay, and you went in just as an enlisted.
Yeah, I went in just as military police. I just wanted to be a policeman, and I always wanted to be since I was little.
Okay, that's what you wanted as a child, then.
Yeah,
as you remember.
Yeah, and then I started doing pretty well, like right off the bat. They have something in the Army called Soldier of the Cycle, and that's like all the people that went into the Army at the time you did, they sort of pick somebody who was the best soldier of that cycle. And I was Soldier of the Cycle, and right away I started getting sort of attention from people trying to recruit me into doing other things with the military.
Right.
And so I went and I kind of got my sort of basic education in police work, and I was lucky enough to go to they call it white hat duty. And when you do white hat duty when you're in the military police, it's almost like you're a civilian police officer. You live in a giant military base, and our base even actually overlapped into the city. So we even coordinated and did patrols with the city. I was based at Fort Meade in Maryland.
Okay.
And so I did that for a little while, and then they came up with this idea. It was actually the exact same time. We were actually slightly before the FBI founded their hostage rescue team. That was sort of the beginnings of terrorism, and
Just late 80s, early 90s?
Yes, yeah, late 80s.
Okay.
And they realized that they needed a hostage rescue anti-terrorism team. That's what we were. It was helicopter borne. You've probably seen it if you've ever seen it on TV or anything, like FBI hostage rescue team. That's what we were. We were founded the same time as them. We trained same places, same time.
Like an extraction team as well? Would you go and extract?
Yeah, it's kind of a long story, but I was actually involved in something I was telling my kids, if you don't mind, since we're just talking here.
That's absolutely right.
I try to get my kids to like be proud of me whenever I can, but
I'm sure they are, James.
I was involved in There was a man back a long time ago in those days. He was in the mafia, and he was going to testify against the mafia. His name was John Busceda.
Okay.
And it was kind of interesting because a couple of years ago we were watching History Channel, or I was myself, and they did a story about it. And they said this was a very important moment in history, this event that happened around this mafia. And so I'm telling my boys, I'm like, did you hear that? Your dad was in a moment in history, and that was me. And
That's awesome. That's awesome. Turn this a little bit for me. You can sit over here. I just want to make sure I got. Perfect.
So our job, my team, was this person he was the first big person to ever testify against the mafia, and he was responsible for wiping out 75% of the mafia in Italy. And during the time that they were trying to get him to trial, 13 different police officers, also a famous judge, people were murdered trying to get him by the mafia, trying to get him to testify.
Italian authorities, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what we did was we went in the middle of the night and borrowed him from Italy, and we brought him back here to the United States.
Extracted him.
Yeah, and we brought him to a military prison, and we disguised him as a prisoner, actually as a very ill prisoner. We put him in an ambulance and brought him. It was kind of cool, and we kept him from being killed so he could testify against the mafia, and it was kind of cool. It was very cool.
While you were doing all that, did you feel like you were doing what you really wanted to do? Was there any moments of regret? Did you feel comfortable, as comfortable as you could be in a circumstance like that?
You know what? It's funny, and it's a good thing I was the way I was, and I still am somewhat, but I was incredibly patriotic and wanted to do anything. I wanted to be a hero so badly for the country and for my family and for everybody. And it was difficult at that time because I couldn't even tell anyone in my family, and I don't even know if I'm supposed to be telling everybody now, but I figure, it's been so many years.
Sure.
I think it's probably okay now. That was another, I can never talk about it for a really long time.
No, I understand.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, so what year did you retire from the military?
I left the military in 1989. I actually got in trouble because my best friend back here in Pittsburgh, he was killed in a car accident.
Okay.
And I wanted to come back home for his funeral. And I was very, especially when I was younger, I was very egotistical and cocky and stuff. So I said, well, I'm leaving. I'm going back to Pittsburgh. And when you're in the Army, you're not really supposed to say, I'm leaving.
That's what I hear.
yeah, they're like touchy about that. So they said,
frown upon that.
They said you can't go. And I said, okay. And then I left. And so I got in trouble.
Understood.
And, you want to know something people might think is funny, and nobody knows this outside of my very immediate family.
All right.
And I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but I think you'll like it.
I'm sure I will.
So when I left the military and I came home, they had somewhere up the chain of command had decided that I was an incredibly dangerous person because of my training and stuff. They thought that I was Rambo. So they literally, I'm not exaggerating,
Really?
They sent a helicopter with an entire Special Forces team, my team, in a helicopter in Dormont, and they flew a helicopter and dropped guys out of a helicopter into my mother-in-law's backyard to try to get me.
Oh my gosh.
I swear I have to God.
Well, so these guys fall out of the sky
in Dormont.
So when they come in, what do they say to you? They want to take you with them? Did they want to talk?
Yeah. No, they stormed the house. Yeah,
really?
It was funny though how bad they sucked though, because I actually was in the house, but I don't know if it was I don't know why, but yeah, they didn't get me, and I actually went to the police station myself.
Oh my!
I just went to Dormont Police, and I said, I think you guys are looking for me.
Oh my gosh! Well, if they weren't, someone else was, right?
Yeah. And then they, just to be perfectly honest, I'm not going to sugarcoat.
No,
I had big highlights in the military, and I had low lights because it was difficult for me to follow orders. But they tried to court-martial me, and but it was funny because so many people came and testified for me and said, you have no idea who this guy is, and they dropped all the charges and everything.
Goodness,
but they still asked me to leave the Army peacefully, so I did.
Oh my! Well, from right to that spot, so that was what, 89. Did you have an idea what you wanted to go do at that point?
No, I didn't, and I think I just sort of fell onto what I had always done, which was athletic things. So when I'd come back home, I was very serious about training to fight, so I fought professionally for a while.
Okay.
And I still actually have never stopped.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. You fought professionally here in Pittsburgh.
Yes. Yep. I fought my whole entire life, and I just never really stopped since I was about 13. I still fight now.
Okay.
One of my best buddies, he was ranked in the UFC, my buddy Eric. It was funny. We had lunch at Eaton Park the other day, and we said this.
Hibbler?
Yeah. Do you know Eric?
Yeah, through social media.
Oh yeah. Eric, my buddy Eric, and we had a meeting, and we said it was like the old fighters meeting. We were talking about neurologic problems.
Yeah, I'm aching over here, and the back's a little sore.
That's exactly what we did. We were like, oh, I have a torn rotator cuff. Eric's like, oh,
yeah. It's a surgery on that recently, right? Last couple of years.
Yeah. Yep.
I pay attention.
Thanks.
So you came back and continued to fight, and then is that where you saw yourself being? That was going to be your career path?
Yeah, it was. And then I had the opportunity, because I worked at different gyms while I was fighting, and I ended up becoming a part owner of a gym.
Okay.
And I thought that that's what I would probably do forever. Because then shortly after that, I was lucky enough to get a job with the Pirates, and so I worked.
What year was that?
The Pirates I was there from 95 to around 2000, right when Gene Lamont left and Mac came in, Lloyd McClendon.
Now how'd that happen? It was a strength and conditioning thing?
Yeah, what happened was it was really luck. What happened was I've always played baseball too.
Right.
I don't know if you still play. Do you still play?
I wish I did.
Oh yeah, I still
the
play.
Old Man League.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Maybe we should connect over that. I need to.
Yeah, 30 and over league I've played in. The last couple of years have been spotty because I've had a couple injuries, but so I've always played baseball. And what happened was at my gym, there was a guy who came in who was actually a prospect for the Yankees, and I was training him, and I trained some different, lots of pro athletes, but so I was training him, and he happened to say to me one day, he said, you play baseball still, right? And I said, yeah, I still play. And he said, you know what? He said, they have like an emergency with the Pirates that they need a catcher. They need a practice catcher.
Okay.
And and they said, "You want to try out?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to try out." And do you want to hear a funny story? Am I allowed to just tell funny stories?
As many as you want, my friend.
So,
as many as you want.
Because I bet you've probably had a daydream like this too. So, so I get to go as a man, like in my late 20s, early 30s, however old I was. I get asked to go for a tryout with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and it's like Field of Dreams.
Oh,
I
I
got
can't
goosebumps
imagine.
right now.
Can't imagine.
So, so I have to have a real tryout down at Three Rivers Stadium, and
wow.
And Jim Leland was there, but Gene Lamont was the coach at that time. But Leland was there. All the coaches were there. The pitching coach, and so this is what happens. I go for my tryout. And you'll know this because you know all about baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So, the funny thing was I've played every position in baseball.
Okay.
I'm usually a shortstop, second baseman, but I played every position except for one position, catcher. Swear to God. But I was so good at faking that I was good at baseball, you wouldn't believe it. So I went and
That's a skill in its own right.
Yeah. So anyways, I get down to catch and the pitcher for the Yankees, he said, "Look, there's a couple things, the only couple things that they really look for." They said, "Always give a really low target, don't move around a lot, and just be clean and efficient. Just stay low target, don't move around a lot, stay calm."
Right.
And I was like, okay. So I get down, I give a real super nice low target. First thing they say is they said, "Wow, that's a great target." I was like, "Thanks." And then I get down. Here comes the first pitch, on my knees. Throw back to the pitcher, smack the pitcher in the shin. He tries to bend down to catch it. One of their $1 million pitchers, smack him in the shin. They're like, "Okay, try again." I go, "Okay, next one." I catch it fine. Throw back, one hopper, bang, bounces off the mound, hits a guy almost in the face. And they're like, so then I remember I think it was Lamont or Leland, one of them who was really scary. He walked up to me, he goes, "Wait a minute." He goes, "What the hell are you doing?" And he goes, "Look," and they just literally canceled my try immediately. He goes like this. He goes, "You know what?" He goes, "I tell you what." He goes, "Go home, come back here tomorrow, try this again." I said, "Okay." I was devastated. So anyways, the coolest thing happened to me, and you'll like this because I know you like sports. When I went back to the gym that night, I was friends with this girl who is a Division I volleyball player, super good, great Division I athlete.
Okay.
And I was talking to her, and she said, "Jim," she said, "you know what you need to do?" She goes, "You need to do visualization." And I was like, "Really? Okay." She goes, "So come in this room with me." We had this room that had a giant mirror. She turned down the light, so it was really kind of dark, and you could just barely see yourself in the mirror. She goes, "Here, squat down with me and look in the mirror." We both squat down to catcher's position next to each other, looking at the mirror. She goes, "Just visualize that you're throwing this perfect snap throw back to the pitcher." And I was like, "Okay." And I did it. I kneeled down in front of the thing, and I did this for like an hour. Just visualize.
Right.
And I swear to God, Eric, it worked so good. The next day, I went back. I had my tryout. Bang! I'm throwing these snap throws. Bang! Perfect, right to the mitt every time. They said, "That's great, Jim. You're hired." And then they made me
Thank God she was there that night, huh?
Yeah. And then so I did that, and then it was funny too because then
did you travel with the team? Were you actually the bullpen catcher?
I was. No, that's a different position.
Okay.
I was the practice catcher, though, like for all practice and especially over the winters.
Okay.
I would be the catcher in the winter, and so they so then it happened that one day I was because I would always work with the strength and conditioning coach, and he said one day he said something about how they really needed an assistant coach and they didn't have somebody. And I said to him, I said, "Hey," I said, "you know this is what I do, right?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I own a gym." I said, "This is that's what I do."
Right.
And he was like, "Really?" He didn't even know it.
Wow.
And then he said, "Okay," he said, "You're the assistant conditioning coach." Yeah. So then I started doing that after that.
And that was you said from around 95, 96 to 2000.
Yeah.
So what did that entail? I mean, you can imagine what a strength and conditioning coach can do generally, but I mean, what was really, because what amazes me about current pro athletes is what you don't see typically unless you really pay attention as a fan is there's an incredible amount of off-field time that they do working on themselves. The weights, the bike, and sitting in the tub, right? I mean,
yeah.
when you did that, I mean, it wasn't like, hey, you recommended this or recommend this. You had to keep.
It was very, very, very structured.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think
Extremely.
the average baseball fan doesn't see that.
Yeah, and especially because there are multi-millions of dollars like at risk. So so if I tell them to do something and they get hurt, like I remember a story the strength and conditioning coach told me, and he said that one time he recommended something with dumbbells, heavy dumbbells, and the pitcher got hurt and he really got in a lot of trouble.
Wow,
they were going to fire him. So, so it's almost a little it wasn't scary at that time or anything.
But there's a
you
risk,
had to be careful.
But there's a risk.
Yeah, believe it or not, it was kind of a funny thing. They used to hide the heavy weights. Because they were so afraid of guys getting hurt, they would hide the 85 dumbbells. They'd hide them somewhere.
Was the guys looking in the mirror and starting to see themselves getting a little bulked up? But that obviously doesn't help swing sometimes, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that's got to be a fine balance too. I think you think about football players eating weights, or at least most of the let's just say maybe 7 of the 11 positions in football, they're eating weights constantly for size and bulk. But in baseball, it's got to be a whole different dynamic because. I think during the Bash era, we were talking off camera about the Oakland A's and the Bash era with those guys being so brawny, and those guys, Canseco and McGuire, could hit home runs, but that won't work for every hitter, right? I mean, if you that can really mess up your swing. I was always told if you work too much arms, or is that really is there any truth to that?
They're very much on the very cutting edge of sports science. Something that I always thought was fascinating that I loved was because you were working for a Major League Baseball organization, they would. The top people from all universities, if they did a new study or they had a new idea or whatever, that you would be the first person they would send it to and ask you if you would put it in a trial, with the players or just to kind of get notoriety for what they were doing. So we were constantly every day getting studies of new ideas, new techniques and everything. So it was really, really cool.
So they were feeding you basically the latest. And it was up to you, your discretion as to what you implemented and what you didn't.
Yep. And also we did stuff like, people probably wouldn't believe this, but we also did things like we had a country square dance, a country line dance instructor come in. Like they would always they would try to think of fun things to do to keep everybody interested in working out.
Yeah.
Yes, you got all these big, baseball players stuff, and we were all doing the what was it, the Jump Street Boogie or whatever
the
whatever
Backstreet Boogie.
Yeah. Like
why do I know that?
Yeah, but it was awesome.
And for the record, friends, he actually asked. That's right. James Houk asked for a red stripe. I want that. He asked for it. Yeah, I gave him another option. He took it. So, Freddie, if you're watching, there you go. See, it isn't just crazy me drinking this stuff.
I love it. I love red stripe. It's
so
fun.
You see, that's a dream for someone like myself or the multitudes of baseball fans to be even part of a major league outfit. It's amazing. My first podcast I did about a month ago was with Susie Cool, who was a Pirate ball girl for many years, and now she is part of the first all-female professional baseball broadcast team. She was the Salem Red Sox.
That's so awesome. I watched it. It was a great podcast.
She is just something else. But it's great for someone like me who just loved the Pirates, loved MLB in general, just the whole essence of baseball, to hear someone have a career in there. I mean, you had to have been pinching yourself.
Honestly, I still think about it almost every single day. It was like, it's one of those jobs where you just can't really believe you had it, and especially for someone like me, that baseball was always my dream, and I was such a fan and loved it. And
were you generally impressed with the character of the cast of characters that were there? I mean, everybody has good and bad days. I get that, but I mean, the quality of the decisions they made on hiring your staff and also the players themselves. I mean,
it was pretty remarkable for such big egos and big money and stuff like that. Pretty much everybody was good. The only guy I remember kind of me really physically almost knocking out was do you remember Esteban Loaiza? He actually just went to jail, I think.
Yes, he did.
And I'm very glad. I don't want to say I'm glad he did, but
no.
I can see that coming. Actually,
he was in the news recently. Not the way you want to be in the news either.
Yeah, he was kind of a jerk. He was a real jerk. I could speak Spanish, and he used to rip on people all the time in Spanish because he thought they couldn't understand them.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, you bring a collection of people together, a collection of men together. Back then it was 24-man roster. I think they expanded to 25 now, but you put 24 men from all different kinds of backgrounds. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a bad apple here. You're going to have a couple players that friction. And the Pirates were going through a bad spell of losing them too. I mean, did you feel any of that? I mean, obviously you were focused on your job, but was there not a cloud, but was that Was the losing, were times could you see it affect the players that
Definitely.
have to, right?
Yeah, and I was a fan too. And also even like it sounds terrible to say, I don't want to ever say anything bad about the Pirates.
No, I
but
understand.
they, even the money situation, like I'll give you an example, like something that really struck me was I also worked for the Yankees because a lot of people might not know this about baseball. You probably do. But something I think is really cool is like if you play for the Yankees, but you are from Pittsburgh, if you're home, you can go train with the Pirates.
Right.
So that's cool.
I did know
think
that.
that's
Which
very
I thought that was
cool.
really, really crazy.
I think it's cool.
Yeah,
like
is,
it could
it
be
is.
your enemy. Like when John Smiley was with Cleveland, I think he would always work out at the stadium with us. I used to love catching him because he was an amazing pitcher and a really nice guy. But so anyways, I was catching the Yankees player, and I remember I was catching and the top of my shin guard just kind of fell off. And the pitcher, he's like, you have the crappiest equipment. He said, why don't you have equipment? And I said, well, this is what the Pirates give me. And it literally should have been in the garbage. It was so bad.
Right.
And he goes, no, you can't catch like that. And he goes, wait one sec. He gets on the phone, and he puts me on the phone with somebody from the Yankees.
Right.
And somebody from the Yankees says, hey, we have the backup equipment from the World Series last year. Do you want
cool
that?
is that?
Oh yeah, no, I don't want that. I don't want the equipment from the World Series. And he sent it to me the next day. And I had I still have
difference
it.
in organization, difference in money.
That made me sad, but that's the way it was. Because I asked the Pirates, I said
they were going through a tough.
I said, look,
tough run.
I'm actually going to get hurt. My equipment is so
someone hit you in
bad.
the kneecap,
Yeah.
right?
And they wouldn't give me equipment.
Yeah.
And the Yankees the next day sent me the World Series equipment.
So you basically had ended that stint right before PNC, right? Mm-hmm. So did you have one season in PNC?
Yes, the beginning.
Okay.
But you want to know something really cool? I swear to God it's true. ROK, who designed the stadium, they were always they spent a lot of time at the River Stadium when they were designing PNC, and they used to come all the time to me personally.
Wow.
And they would say, what do you think we should do as far as the training area?
Oh, that's very cool.
And like I literally
So your
had
stamps on
I
that.
had the architect. I had his phone number, and he would say, Jim, if you ever think of anything you think we should put in PNC Park, call me and we'll put it in there.
How cool is that,
Can you
right?
believe that?
Did you call him?
Yeah, I did.
I would think so.
Isn't that awesome?
You got your little. So you have a little stamp on that stadium
Yeah.
too. So I find it amazing. So the 5 or 7 years you were there, and then you see that 1 year at PNC. So talk about the differences in ballpark there, in facilities. Had to be night and day.
Oh my God, it was almost a little hard to get used to because I mean, even though PNC of course has such an old baseball inspiration, which is
Right.
so beautiful.
Right.
One thing I couldn't believe is I always thought, I can't believe they got this so right. Because the Pirates were so bad at everything.
Everybody says that.
They were so bad at everything, designing anything, doing anything, and they got it perfectly. Lucky they just handed it all over to ROK to do it.
Absolutely right.
Because they were the worst.
Oh, I know. That was a bad run for them. And I would like to think organizationally they have their act together now. New management, obviously, we can sit all night and discuss their payroll, which is obviously directly, unfortunately, represents their play on the field still. But that was always an issue with the Pirates. I mean, and it's just... and a little aside, have you just noticed recently that how low the attendance is all across baseball? I mean, I was watching Oakland play Baltimore last night. There was 4,700 people in the stadium. I think the Pirates had a couple games that were 7,000 or 8,000 plus. I mean, that's even you didn't see low crowds like that, I don't think, in the late 90s.
No, I could almost feel it coming though. It's almost like my wife said to me that we went to a game recently, and she said to me, I feel like this is a big con. She said, I feel like it's a con. She said, they're not putting any money in the team.
Right.
You have to pay $7 for a pop. It's got to come crashing down at some point.
Yeah, and it's I think what happens too is you have some teams that will actually have a good year. Some low payroll teams will actually have that unique year where things kind of like the planets all line up, and then I think they look and they say, well, see, they did it. Why can't we do it? Well, that's because it takes that 1 year where everything kind of and they never win the World Series. They just get in the playoffs, but. In the end, I think the Pirate circumstance, I think it will at some point right itself when ownership changes, and that's a whole other discussion. But I'm just thrilled to hear about the story that you were the strength and conditioning coach. That had to be And now, was this a not 9 to 5, but that was your main quote unquote gig during those years? Are you still running the gym, right?
Yeah, I was still running the gym, but can you imagine that's a job even?
I can't. No, I can't. So what was a typical day like that? What was a typical day like time wise?
I would go there in the mornings. Always, we would start a little bit before 10. I would catch the pitchers for, I don't know, a couple hours. I'd catch all the pitchers.
Cool. That's physical. That's physical.
I'll keep but you know what though? It was like I was on air all the time though. I swear to God, it sounds so silly, but I remember every day when I would go to work, I'd always drive past this sign. They had this steel sign on the highway that said Three River Stadium this way, and every single time I saw that, I'd be so happy.
Yeah,
and excited.
I bet.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so where I find your story really compelling, and I really want to dive into this for a second. You went from, and I did see all the. Once you became a designer, you probably always a designer in heart, but once you actually became a quote-unquote designer, recognized designer, you had some baseball outfits in there too. I saw you designed some baseball uniforms too. I saw all that. That was I saw some kind of photograph that it looked like it was either for a movie or for a campaign of some kind. It was baseball oriented. But anyways, so you're doing this job. How did it come to an end? Had you had enough? Was there an organizational change? Were you being pulled different directions?
Yeah, well, I was being pulled in different directions, and I actually, I still to this day sometimes regret that.
Really?
I because it was the greatest job in the world to me, and I know you can't do anything
right.
forever,
right?
But I had an opportunity that I had always been sort of creative and artistic, and I had started this other work of designing.
Now,
and all
did
of a sudden,
happen? Let's talk about that for a second. That is,
I have no idea.
If you don't know, no one's going to know.
I have no idea. It was all, I always say that it was all just luck, but I guess I've always been good for some reason at knowing what sells. And I hate to say this, it sounds terrible, but you can't really be a designer for very long if you don't sell. And I've always had, I have a reputation of always having really great sell-through, or else you're not a designer anymore.
Right.
They don't care. Stores
right.
don't care about
right.
you. They care if your stuff sells.
Exactly.
And so what had happened was I got the opportunity to do it. And
now, how'd that happen? Like, I mean, I'm just saying, your story at this point is you had a very dynamic military career, which ended abruptly, and that's a great story how it ended too, as well, as long as it worked out okay for you. And then you go on to be a fighter, and then you're now a co-owner of a gym, and you start working for the Pirates, and that's a big stretch to become a designer. Like, how'd that happen? Did someone pull you in? Was it
what happened was I was always interested in photography, and I was learning photography from a friend who I was considering
the film days, right?
Yeah,
or just on the cusp of digital coming, right?
Exactly, you're exactly right in between the two. And I was learning the whole business because I was gonna hopefully invest in it, and actually, because I really liked it. I was really considering getting into photography and being a co-owner of a studio. Excuse me. And so what had happened was, I'd always been a painter, and one of the people who came to the photography studio was the art critic for the Post-Gazette.
Okay.
And he had seen, I had brought a couple of my paintings in to show to, I think, one of my friends, and he just happened to see them. And he said, wow, he said, these paintings are really good. And he said, would you bring some more in? And I said, sure. So I had an appointment with him. I brought in a bunch of my paintings, and back at that time, I mostly just did sports. I really loved sports paintings. And so I brought all this stuff in for the critic from the Post-Gazette, and it just so happened that a client was American Eagle, and American Eagle was there, a buyer for American Eagle, not even a buyer, a creative director, and the creative director was looking at saw my paintings, and they said, can you translate what you do here into clothing? I said, I don't know, I never even thought of it, I don't know. And I did I went home and thought about it, and just could always draw on paint and stuff, and so I did some stuff. It was golf stuff in the beginning.
Golf,
and
okay, I didn't know that.
I actually sold to at one time. I sold to the top 100 clubs in the world at one time.
Golf clubs.
Golf
club.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
And the funny thing is, I'm really, really into sports. I've done a lot of sports, but not golf. And like, people have yelled at me all the time. Like, I've been at Pebble Beach, and people say, oh, did you play? And I'll be like, nah, I don't really like golf. And I'm like, what's wrong with you?
I can relate to that.
He said, you should have your clubs in the car everywhere you go.
Yep.
But yeah, so I did that, and I almost right off the bat sold a lot. And
Is it now golf shirts, golf shorts? What was it?
Well, eventually there was a line at Dick's, and I'm not even sure if it's even still there anymore, but I created an entire line. It was called Walter Hagen, the Walter Hagen line. And all the stuff in the Walter Hagen line was me. I designed everything. The logo. I even designed the furniture in the stores that it was displayed in.
That's
I was like,
insane.
what? I was at a meeting with them, and they said, what are you going to do about point of purchase furniture? And I was like, I don't know. And they said, why don't you make something? And you want to know something really funny? I made it myself at home, and I stained it, and I didn't seal it right. I took it to Dick's, and I put stuff on it, closed. They all stuck to it. Stuff was...
Walter Hagen was you.
Yeah,
wow.
Every single thing.
Did you come up with that name, or was that a marketing arm?
No, that was he was a famous golfer a long
That's
time
what
ago.
I thought. Yeah.
And they owned the rights to it. And
name.
They asked me if I liked it, and I said yes. All
right. So it started with golf.
Yeah.
And then where did
Which
it
I
go?
didn't even like. And then so then after
Barney's enters the picture soon here, right?
Yeah. Then I just did I did different things like lifestyle things, just mostly vintage athletic, because that was what I liked, and I was very good at it.
Were you fitting this in between still running the boxing studio?
No.
Okay.
This was pretty much that all happened at the exact same time. I decided to walk away from the gym and go into design.
Okay.
And it sold so well that then somebody said to me, you should try to do this on your own. Rather than, because what I was doing was I had a partnership with a factory in California, and so that's how we would do Dick's stuff, because Dick's orders, were huge. We did a 1 million piece order once.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So so they said you should do it on your own, do something. So I started to try to think of more creative things, different tops, and just started. Everything I've done in fashion has really just been an extension of, I think, my painting and drawing that I've always done. That's how I've always looked at it. It's just another...
From a color standpoint?
Art. Yeah, everything. Just art. Like I've just felt like it was another extension of my artwork. And so I asked people when I first started, I said, well, what's the best store in the world? And people said, Barney's New York is the best store in the world. And I said, okay, I'm going to Barney's. And they said, you can't go to Barney's. They said, you can't, they won't even talk to you. You can't go there. So I just went to Barney's.
That's all the reason why you did it.
Yeah. So I went to New York. I walked in Barney's and I sold them. First time I took my stuff in there, I sold them. And then
you walked in the front door of Barney's, asked to see a purchasing agent, I'm guessing, or the director of purchasing.
Asked to see a men's buyer and sold it right first time. And they
wow.
And then what happens is, again, sort of luck, is that if you sell to Barney's is the best store in the world. Then if you talk to another store and you're showing them their stuff, the first thing they'll always say is, who do you sell to? And I say, I sell to Barney's New York. And they'll either say, usually they'll say, okay, then I want it too, if Barney. Or if they don't say that, then you can be like, wow, there's something wrong with you. You don't want what Barney's has?
Understood. So that was definitely a nice anchor to have when you're presenting anyways.
And then the other early connection that I made that still goes even to today was there's a store in California called Fred Siegel, and Fred Siegel is the store. That's the store that all the movie stars go to, and the different and movies and production, and so I sold to them, and then once I sold to Fred Siegel, then all of a sudden there'd be movie stars wearing my stuff, and there would be like people started calling me on American Idol once. One of the judges from American Idol was wearing my shirt. Yeah,
Randy.
Yeah, and so then all of a sudden, so it starts to snowball.
Where
after
was
that.
do you remember when you first, in your design career early on? I'm sure it happened. Do you remember when you had your first aha moment? Like, oh my gosh, so and so just called me, or oh my gosh, unbeknownst to me, I'm looking at television. That's mine. That person's wearing mine. Would you remember what the first one was?
I remember one of the first ones. I was in LA, and I was walking into a restaurant, like for a business dinner or lunch, and I was walking in the door, and this guy was walking out the door, and he was wearing my shirt. And this was pretty early on, and I was like, I stopped and I was like, hey, that's my shirt. He was like, "What? I said I designed that." He's like, "All right, that's cool." You know.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
It's happened a lot since then.
Yeah,
I'll tell you something even funnier than that is something that happens to me very often is I like to go to thrift stores and antiques shops and stuff, and a lot of times I'll see my old shirts in the thrift store.
Oh my gosh!
And I'll be,
that's a cycle of fashion.
That's my shirt. I see them. I see my shirts all the time in the thrift stores.
That's a cycle of fashion, right?
Yeah. And then something else that's happened is too. I think that it's like I've done two things. I've done very, very high end stuff, but I've also done stuff where there've been a lot like high numbers. Like there was a store in Pittsburgh called Route 21.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
There was a time at Route 21 where every single thing in their store I designed, men's and women's.
Oh my
every
gosh.
single thing. Not to brag, but I personally pulled them out of bankruptcy myself.
Wow.
My stuff sold really, really well there. And so there was a time when I was doing tons of stuff for American Eagle, tons of stuff, like super high volume stuff. So then that's why I would see a lot of my stuff around.
So so I would imagine from a design standpoint, and I can only relate to this from the guitar end of it. We design for a certain price point, and then we design for 2 more price points. So basically it was 3. And I did better on the high end and the medium. The low end I didn't do too well. Was there... How do you do that with fashion? I mean, like the
it is difficult
there's all
because
kinds of creativity, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's the same with your work too. Any type of creative work that you're always worried about kind of hurting your brand. You know, like it's difficult. That's very difficult to do, to sell to Barney's, but then also sell to a lower price point, like somebody like Route 21. It worked out okay for me because they were almost sort of like local stores, like Dick's Sporting Goods. I've done several lines for Dick's Sporting Goods.
Right.
You know, Route 21, American Eagle. So they were all. It was almost like doing stuff for your hometown.
Sure.
And something that's been regrettable for me is that there was never very many options for my high-end stuff in Pittsburgh. For high-end boutiques or shopping.
Yeah, there's not many boutiques here.
Yeah, the last 2 places I sold to in Pittsburgh were Saks Fifth Avenue, but now they're gone, and there was a jeans place in the South Side called Pittsburgh Jeans Company, and I sold my jeans there.
Unfortunately probably spent a lot of money in that store over the years.
Yeah, but it's kind of sad. Like I've sold so much, you know, in LA.
Let's talk about Big Chief for a second, because that's in doing my homework on you. I mean, that's very prominent out there. How the inspiration? Obviously denim was a real thing in the 2000s, wasn't it? I mean, I remember the high end jeans store. I remember Pittsburgh jeans. I remember just. You know, you had your retail stores, Buckle, and you had all the different brands that were involved with there. But even from the
I sold to Buckle too.
I'm sure. And when I was working with artists, whether it was Paul Stanley of Kiss, and even some of your harder guys, Scott Ian of Anthrax, you go to these after event parties, and you look around, and even some of these harder edge rock and roll guys, you know, you look and they'd be wearing these really ornate, and I'm sure very expensive jeans. So there was a period where ornate jeans really became a thing. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
And Big Chief was like right in there.
Yeah, it was kind of funny though. I tried to take the opposite approach. Like there were those jeans that were like highly decorated, which I didn't.
Well, those brands are still they're out there still, but some of them I read on I think it's a Wall Street Journal article. They're struggling.
Yeah,
and I don't know why. Maybe because
it's just like you said, it's trend, cyclical? Right? It's cyclical and it costs a lot of money too. Like they're expensive to buy and they're expensive to make.
Well, talk about Big Chief, because one of the things I read was that you took elements of Pittsburgh, old pieces of steel from steel.
Yeah,
that is so cool.
Oh,
how'd you come up with that?
I don't know. I've always tried to. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've always tried to. When people ask me where I get my design inspiration from, I've always tried to bring things from home, and I've always said that I try to design kind of from Middle America out, because then I feel like I can't go wrong. And everything I design has a special meaning to me. Like, so my family, believe it or not, I'm old enough that I worked in steel mills myself, actually, when I was very young, and my family worked in steel mills, and so that was kind of a natural thing I just thought of. I wanted something that had integrity. Everything I design has integrity. And so I thought that nothing could be cooler than that, than every bit of metal that was in my jeans came from a Pittsburgh steel mill or the site of an old steel mill.
Right.
I actually had people collecting metal from steel mills.
I read that.
And I have really cool pictures even that I used to use in some of my marketing. I even had this guy and his little company up in Massachusetts. They were steel forging my stuff, and I told him, I said, I want pictures with sparks flying.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're hammering in the forge. They're like, for real, like, it's not made up. That's how they did it. And it was like, that was so cool.
Yeah, there's no question. That's a good story too. And we've tried so hard in this town to change the image. I think Mayor Caligiuri tried to do it in the 80s and then in the 90s, and we're still a steel town. And I think finally, whether it's been the generations below us, they finally have embraced it from marketing. I mean, I think there's even a Steel City company in Pittsburgh that sells merch like clothing, like T-shirts and things. But I think it was savvy of you to do that. That was a very savvy move.
No, thanks.
Yeah, no,
it actually, I don't think it was actually so quite pre-planned. I think it was just it sort of came from me, So I think it has integrity that way. And the name Big Chief,
where'd that come from?
We want to hear something funny. Is a lot of people think that it comes from Native Americans, and believe it or not, I went through a period of a couple of years where I was getting pounded by Native Americans, just like sort of questioning,
the use of the word.
Yeah, and I learned a lot. But anyways, so what I did was I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to go to the Indian chiefs myself,
right,
and work this out with them. So my partner and I, we went on a field trip up to New York, and we met with the chiefs of the different 5 nations.
Yeah.
And one thing that helped me out a lot was one of the chiefs' daughters wanted to be a designer. She actually was a designer, and she knew who I was, and she was like, "Oh, he's
funny
awesome."
How that works.
Yeah. But so I did that, and we actually made a partnership, but the name had nothing to do with Native Americans. What it had to do with was when I was a little kid, my grandfather taught me to collect pop bottle caps. And so in my spare time, I would always collect pop bottles. And there was the Big Chief cherry soda. Oh, yeah. And that was my favorite bottle cap.
Isn't that funny, though? That's inspiration. You found out something with your childhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's Big Chief is actually... It's actually a pop bottle. So.
Wow! Now how many years did that? Are you still making Big Chief jeans?
Yeah, Big Chief is it's become something that's really just exclusive to Fred Siegel in California. And I feel bad because friends and people are always saying like, "Well, where can I buy those Big Chief jeans?"
I love the jacket. I love the embroidery. I mean, there's some of that stuff is just dynamite.
Yeah,
even an old guy like me would like to wear that.
Yeah, they're nice because they're actually pretty understated actually, and the fit is very classic and traditional. And, but they're just at Fred Siegel now in California, and it's kind of hard to get them. But
now also, I read that there were Grammy Awards, certain years in Grammy Awards and Academy Awards where I guess to someone like myself who likes movies casually, but I'm more into the music business, the one thing that isn't a well-hidden secret is that the stars get gift bags, right? I mean, it's like, it's almost like the average person will say, well, they're so wealthy and they get everything anyways, and now they get showered with more stuff.
Right.
I found this out when I was working with KISS, and I was out in L.A., and Mr. Stanley told me he was going to an event with his wife that night because the gift bags were going to really be amazing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I had to have someone else enlighten me as to what that was.
Yeah.
But at the Academy Awards and in some of the Grammys, they were giving your clothing was part of the gift bag. Is that right?
Yes, it was the Grammys and the Academy Awards.
Now, did you attend? Did you also go attend?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
The Grammys, I went. We were asked to be in the Grammys, and then while I was in LA, preparing for the Grammys, somehow someone from the Academy Awards saw my stuff, and they said, "We want you in the Academy Awards too." So
you were out there.
Yeah, and then so I got to be in both.
That would be a little surreal.
I've been in 2 Grammys and 1 Academy Awards. Yeah.
That's a little surreal.
Oh my God, yeah. I got to, the first person who came to look at my stuff was, do you remember Joan Collins?
I sure do.
And she's like, to our age, she's like a big star, like kind of old time Hollywood.
No question, right?
She's the first person who walked up to me, and I was like,
she's a legend.
God, you're Joan Collins.
She's a legend.
Yeah. And then eventually, I got to meet so many stars, and they were all really nice. But yeah, that was
different world
awesome.
out there.
It was fun.
Yeah, definitely world. So, what about on the music side of it? You said you never personally play, but did you have an inroads into music as well too?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I've made. It's funny. Right now, I'm doing a project with. I'm not really supposed to talk about because a lot of stars, they'll have lines, but
I understand.
You kind of ghost design for them, and they're not really supposed
to. Well, someone outed. Did you work? You working with Cardi B? Was one of them? Yeah, that was out. That was out there. That's why I saw it in there.
Yeah, I do a lot of work for. There's a company called FashionNova. I design a lot of stuff for FashionNova, and Cardi B has a line.
So, in terms of your schedule, do you still? Do you have to allot time to go out in LA and do design work? You're trying to do more of it here at home?
You know what I've tried to do is, up until a few years ago, I spent about half of my time in Los Angeles, and I live with my partners out there, and so I was spending a whole lot of time there, and also in New York too.
Right.
But I just couldn't really do that anymore, like with my family. It was too hard to do, and so now I still go out to Los Angeles very often, but I have kind of people that work under me, and I have assistants out there, so I can stay home a little bit more.
Well, that's got to be a heck of a lot better, right?
Yeah, it's a lot better.
I can't even imagine being away that much, and I travel a lot for my prior careers, but my goodness, I mean. But again, you get the phone call, and
that's crazy too, because like there were many times where I would get a call at night, and they would want me to be in LA in the morning.
Oh my!
And it's just
hard out of Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Now I'm like usually in my pajamas like, all the time, all day. I say, "Oh, let me get onto my office."
You've earned that, right?
Yeah, I did.
Was there ever? Let me ask you this: was there ever? I don't know. I mean, did you ever turn down a celebrity? Did you ever turn down whether it was a movie that they wanted a certain kind of piece for a movie? Was there ever something that you actually turned down? You didn't want to be part of it for whatever your reasons were?
Yeah, it's funny. It just popped in my head actually. Oh my God, who was it? It was a celebrity that my partner hated, and everybody hated at that time, and they wanted me to design a line for them. Oh my God, who is it? I probably shouldn't say their name anyway. But yeah, there was one pretty big celebrity that wanted me to design a line with them, and we said no just because my partner hated them.
That was the only reason.
Yeah, just their persona or whatever. Yeah.
You find how do you find LA? Now listen, obviously LA is here and Pittsburgh's here, but how do you feel about Los Angeles?
I don't. I feel like it's a nice place to visit, and I like when I'm there, but I just cannot get into the mindset of living there. I mean, I'm really lucky that like I get treated really nicely when I'm there, and I get to go to nice restaurants, and I stay in nice places. But I'm an East Coast guy. I just can't feel it. I mean, it's so much a part of me now for all these years that it is like a second home, but I still just like the East Coast.
So I'm guessing you prefer New York over LA.
Yeah. I don't know if you did, but I know a lot of people, creative people or people who have businesses, you always kind of call them your New York years. Like I had my New York years, and and it was awesome. It was exhilarating, exhausting, fun. Like
different kind of pace up there.
Yeah, and you really do kind of feel like if you make it there, you're kind of like on top of the world. And I was on top of the world for a while there, and it felt awesome. I loved it.
For those who haven't, my main vendor for my years that I was in the guitar business was in Chicago, but travel took me all over. I think New York and Pittsburgh New York and LA are so different from Pittsburgh in their own unique ways, but New York and LA are completely different. Yeah, and you tell that to people like, oh no, there's stars there, they're all the same. Everything from the weather, the pace. Would you not agree that the pace of just everything?
Also, too, it's funny. It's something we used to talk about that we thought was funny, like stars, for example. You would be hanging out with a star in New York, nobody would even bother them. Nobody would talk to them. LA, it's everybody's like paparazzi and stuff want to chase the stars around.
It's different in New York.
They could care less.
Yeah, so let's get out of my way. I'm trying to get past you to go on and do what I want to do. Yeah, so the big New York fashion houses, the Garment District. Everybody hears about the Garment District. I've never been there. For those who don't even understand what the Garment District is, probably me raising my hand. When I say Garment District, what does that comprise? What area of New York is that, and what goes on there?
You know what I think would be interesting maybe for people to hear is, because it was interesting for me too, because you always, you're growing up and you hear in movies and stuff, or in the news you hear the garment district, this, that. It's really just collections of stores that have fabric, and it's difficult to like in Pittsburgh, and in Pittsburgh it's very difficult to
conceptualize it or understand?
Yeah, and you don't. They're it's getting better. I know that I've had talks with the city and stuff about trying to do something where there could be access to fabrics and stuff, but like you didn't see that very much in Pittsburgh. You had to go to New York or Los Angeles, and it's strings of offices and shops and stuff that just have rolls of fabric. They have different, and like people would be surprised to know that like when I'm designing something, a lot of times I'll just go walk through shops in Los Angeles, or I might, a lot of times I'll get, my partners are all Korean, and there's really great fabrics from Korea too, and like they'll just show me different things that they have, and yeah, it's much more organic than I think people think. It's not quite as dreamy or whatever. You're thinking of something you'd like to make. You go get inspired by different fabrics, and you'll actually go buy your fabrics. I mean, some are custom made for you. Like I'm lucky enough that I have partners who own factories, and I'll make some things to my own specifications. But a lot of times it's much more organic than people think. You're actually physically, hey, I need buttons, and you'll go and look at buttons at a store.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? So at any point in time someone could find you in the garment district, kind of strolling through and going to these garment houses.
Yeah.
And you individually picking out what you want for something that you're creating in your mind.
Yeah. And also a big part for me is you that people won't really know around here, but I'm very into washes, and there are things in Los Angeles called wash houses. And
washes. What do you mean by washes?
Washes are like if you like something to have a special feel,
got it.
You'll take it to a wash house, and it's lots and lots of giant washing machines, or kind of like these
like a faded things. I think about wash. I think about acid wash jeans.
Yeah,
I'm dating myself now,
that too, and you'll like you'll spend a whole day just experimenting, coming up with a wash you like, a feel for it, a combination of chemicals, stones you'll wash it with.
So they're putting in a washing machine. They're putting different elements in there to change the. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I don't understand that at all.
And I something else I think people would think is kind of bizarre. Like I've worked a lot with big denim companies, and there are houses in Los Angeles where you'll have a row of 50 dummies or 50 mannequins, and they'll all have a pair of jeans on, and you'll have 100 people just going over and like sandpapering a little bit here, scratching a little bit here, maybe throwing a dot of paint on. Like they're people don't realize, I think they're physically made by hand. There's not like a fairy making them or something like you think of.
Well, there's that much art goes into it. Mm-hmm. It is art, right? The things you're involved with now, the design elements. You had a company for a while. It was called Jet. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was a design. That was your own private label.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I just called kind of my home studio, Jet Street. I called it.
And you had a Chow's line for a while too. Is that right?
Yeah.
Jet Kids, or was it Jet?
Yeah, it was called Kid Jet.
Kid Jet.
Yeah. It's it actually sold. I actually it's still selling. I have the best kids showroom in Los Angeles, features Kid Jet. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow, it's amazing to me. Yeah. So you said in your travel slowed down, so you're not in LA as much. Are you still making regular trips to the garment district in New York?
No. I think I might still have some stuff at Barney's. They have Barney's has a this is a little embarrassing, but
it's all right.
They have an outlet store, Barney's Outlet. Last time I checked, they were
still cyclical, right?
Last time I checked, they were still selling my stuff in Barney's Outlet. So
let me ask you this, because when I was a young man, starting on my way in the 80s, I was very much enamored with Ralph Lauren stuff. Now, it might have been the fact that, I perceived...
You have good taste.
Well, I perceived that Polo was an upscale brand, and that probably was the big thing for me. But as time moved on, it was amazing, James, because I remember buying a Ralph Lauren... This is how crazy my memory is. A Ralph Lauren Oxford shirt for work. I had a sit-down desk job, and I had a white button-down Oxford shirt. It was $52.50. I want to say it cost me $52.50 in 1989. A lot of money.
Yeah.
Those shirts, if properly laundered with a good with a good launder house, they would last for 5 to 7 years. Their stuff seemed to really last. I get my money out of it. What is it about what is it about Ralph Lauren, at least and I'm sure Ralph Lauren's changed over the years, but let's take that 80s, let's take the mid 80s to the mid 90s. What was it about Ralph Lauren where they got a premium dollar for their product, but it seemed like that style was kind of timeless, because no matter what years, I can go buy that same shirt today.
Yeah.
Right?
I've actually I've worked with Ralph Lauren. They have he has some very high-end stores called RRL.
Okay.
And I've done some work with Ralph Lauren's RRL stores, some design consulting. And a lot of people have said my stuff reminds them of Ralph Lauren, like Big Chief.
That's where I was going.
Does. Yeah.
That's where I was going.
It is the
That's
same.
a compliment.
It's the same things that I appreciate. It's very timeless. It's Americana. It's very iconic. That's what it is. It's things. It never goes out of style.
So from a consumer standpoint, and again, my viewpoint's much different than yours, but in the 80s, when I was paying attention, early 90s, Lauren and Calvin Klein were kind of running maybe neck and neck, or at least in the consciousness of what we could see here in Pittsburgh. Meaning if we went to Kaufman's, dating myself, or Horns, or Gimbels, or Boscov's later on, those, especially Lauren, they had their own kiosk in the store. Is that right? Their own section of the store. And then sometimes Calvin Klein would. It seemed to me that Ralph Lauren was very conservative, and Calvin Klein was not edgy, but more contemporary. Is that safe? Is that a safe assumption to make for the most part?
Yeah, it is. And also something that happens is I don't know if you're sort of referencing a little bit of a decline, like with Calvin Klein.
Absolutely.
What it is we always sort of had this saying almost from when I first started, that people would caution me about you had to be very careful about who you sold to, where you got your stuff from. My stuff was all made in America, and if you would sort of sell out, like it's kind of funny, but years ago, I had an opportunity.
You say sell out, like lowering the quality of your items to make more the profit margin rise.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. Is years ago, I had the opportunity to sell to Walmart, and I declined, even though it's millions of dollars. I declined to do that because I knew it would kind of be the death of what I was doing, and that's what I mean by selling out. Once you sell to someone like that, then there's tons of your stuff everywhere at a low price point.
And then how do you come back?
And there's to
raise the prestige of the brand, right?
And something people have always told me too, like when I've sold to these high-end boutiques, and I still get it today, is people like the fact that people don't know who I am.
Right.
Like it's kind of a mystery.
That's
and
interesting.
I've always had people tell me that when I've been at shows and stuff, like in New York or something, like they'll say that they really like to feature me because no one knows who I am, and it's kind of interesting. And so you try to keep that mystery a little bit.
I mean, you're more parochial toward Pittsburgh because everybody in this town knows who you are.
Yeah.
But I'm sure. Come on. I mean, you're saying the average American out maybe in Wisconsin, going to an upscale mall.
Yeah, they're not going to know.
Okay.
Which is good, and I tried to keep it that way because, like I was telling my friend Eric, I was telling you about, he has a little he has a business and he's going to do some clothes and stuff I'm helping him with. And they were asking me, well, don't we want to put our name on it right off the bat? And I said, I don't think I put my name on anything I made for at least 10 years because I purposely tried to keep that mystery, because I knew whenever I would go to these shows in New York and stuff like that, I knew that if they didn't know who I was, then I was very interesting to them.
Like a mystique almost.
Yeah, exactly. But now it's funny because now I've had the opportunity. I'm in the beginning process right now. I am selling to Walmart now.
Okay.
But it's okay because I've already accomplished everything.
Yeah.
Not to sound like I'm blowing my own horn.
I get it.
Like in this business and really like in life, I've done it all already. I'm getting older and I've accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish.
But it almost should be a reward at this point too.
Yeah.
I mean, if that mass merchant sees enough value in your product, you've earned the right to get there, right?
Yeah. And they've also and somebody here, a magazine I was interviewed for, said something really interesting. I had said something about, sometimes I worry about selling out. And she said to me, did you ever notice that the people who criticize you for selling out are never in a position that they could
sell
sell
out.
out themselves.
Music reference, right? They say the same thing about, the bands that I was working with or the bands I loved as a kid. And, many, whether it's been Aerosmith, Motley Crue, all these rock and roll bands say the same thing. Yeah, we sold out every flipping night.
I love that.
Every flipping night. And we're not making any apologies over it either. If you give the people what they want, too. Early on, I always wondered this about fashion. We did it with the guitar business a little bit where we would do a sample size. We would... On the high-end guitars especially. Now, so my product mix was simply this. I won't get too boring with you, but we had $800 in down retail. So whatever the deal were sold, it was usually 2/3. Then we had like $2,200 in down, and then we had the sky was the limit. It could be $10,000 down. So, but on the high-end stuff, we didn't expect to move that much profit, that much product. But it was very special stuff. Some of it's in the room here. Some of these are donated by my customers. I never kept much. The point was, we would do a sample. We would do like a run of something and test the water, test the market. How much in the fashion industry, how much public testing is done or product testing or product sampling is done to catch the mood and the vibe? Or is it basically you're all in, you take a shot, sink or swim it?
It's all if it's a big chain or not. Like I've designed and I've sold to relatively big chains, like say like PacSun or somebody like that. I designed for PacSun for a while. Somebody like that, they sort of have the budget and the wherewithal to do test runs, and they'll do that.
How is that done, though? How do they do that?
They'll put, they'll pick so many stores, and they'll put a run size in so many stores and see how it sells, and it has to sell a certain percentage of their sales, like 5% or something.
Okay.
But high-end boutiques, they all go by just feel. Like if they know it's going to sell,
that's a risky business
but
plan.
high-end boutiques are usually just 1 or 2 or 3 locations, so they don't have to worry too much. And also too, if you have a good reputation of like kind of sell-through, like they're not, like with me, for example, they're not taking that big of a chance.
Right.
Like people never believe this in my business, but I had a relationship when I sold to Barney's. I sold to Barney's for over 10 years. I had a relationship with them where I would send them like a just sort of a sketch or a printout that had like 5 sort of pictures on it, and I would say, hey, I want to do this, and I would fax it to them, and they would just say, okay, yeah, like they trusted me so much that they would just say, yeah, whatever you want to do it.
But you've proven yourself, yeah. And I think I can somewhat run a very much smaller scale with the guitar thing. Once we had some success. And it was funny, you made a comment earlier that really resonated with me. You said, "This is Eric. It might sound arrogant, but I always kind of had a feeling. I kind of knew what people wanted to wear. I kind of knew what they liked.
Yeah.
And my story is similar in a way that I approached a bunch of guitar companies early on. I was just a huckster. I was buying cheap, selling high, on vintage gear. I kept saying to myself, you know what? I know that 17-year-old kid, he wants a guitar that looks like that, plays like that. I can do that. Mm-hmm. No one will listen to me. And then like my 5th choice was Washburn out of Chicago. They embraced it. The point was I had that little tinge in me that like I know what they want to play. And you get a little taste of success in that, and it just builds that confidence.
Yeah.
And then you feel.
And I don't know if it's inborn. Like maybe you were just sort of born that way, that you had an intuition to what would work.
But obviously you felt that, and that was that when you said that earlier, it really resonated with me because I would tell people I just kind of knew.
Yeah,
like, how'd you know it was? I just kind of knew.
I feel like it's lucky. I don't know why, but I've always known what would sell. I can't remember one thing I've ever designed.
As you've gotten older and as your life's progressed, has it changed? You still have that same feeling?
You know what's funny? Sometimes I worry about that because design is sort of a young person's field.
Really?
You would think, well. But actually, it's not true. Like I think maybe it's just me with self-doubt, but because it's really not true. I still know what sells, and it hasn't changed. You would think it would because I'm getting old, but it doesn't really. Especially the type of things I've always designed have been kind of timeless, anyways.
You made your mark before celebrity influencers, for the most part, right? I mean, there was influencers, but they weren't on a daily basis like it is today. So my question is, how has it changed now?
It's hugely different. Like there are whole businesses built just on influencers, like you said, like people who have a lot of followers on Instagram or things.
So you have to be aware of that. If you're going to design today, you have to be aware of that.
Yeah,
do you like that or
me?
not?
I don't.
I
don't care.
Good. That's good to hear.
It's just just me, but I'm cognizant of it, and I realize that there are whole brands that are built on that, and
do those brands
great.
ever last long? I'll tell you why. There was one called Von Dutch. It was a hat company that had this little logo. And the reason I bring it up is a couple of movie...
Von Dutch still owes me money.
So it's a bad conversation to have.
Well,
I just made it up because they went away. They peaked.
You really know what you're talking.
And they fell off.
You really know what you're talking about.
Pay attention,
they're
buddy.
used. You know what? We used to say in the office and stuff. Say, we don't want to, like, Von Dutch became a, what is it? Is it an adjective, or like you would say we don't want a Von Dutch.
It's a human meme,
because
right? Yeah.
they were the ultimate of trucker hats and stuff like that. And when I came into Von Dutch was after they had fallen off a cliff and they were like completely dead and they wanted to try to come back. That's when they came to me and said, can we do this over again with more integrity, not just, the trucker hats.
What went wrong there? Give me a case study. What happened there?
They just they're like they're the case study of what not to do. I mean,
give me an example.
Well, they just they got really, really popular because you had different stars wearing their trucker hats. Really, it was
I remember that.
Really, it was trucker hats.
I remember that.
And they had a great history, like a really cool identity. But then what they did was they just completely oversaturated the market with their trucker hats and stuff, and they
were in souvenir shops. I was down in the Carolinas in some $5 souvenir shop, and they're everywhere.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Like,
they saturated the market, and what they were producing was very trendy.
Right.
So if you're doing something that's good for them. I know that I have partners who manufactured a lot of their stuff, and they made a lot of money. So great, they made money, but then their brand was dead. And then they asked me to do design work for them, and they still owe me money.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I remember that peak, and that was I'm trying to think who was the big quote unquote influence. That was the first time the influencer thing that was on my radar, because I want to say it was Matt McConaughey or somebody, a couple of rock stars, rockers, people in rock and roll were wearing their stuff too. And it always just seems such a game. I will tell you this from the clothing end, you'll get a kick out of this. I got a lot of satisfaction where I would go to these rock shows where I was working with an artist with a guitar with Washburn, and all their crew was wearing Boogie Street stuff. And I look out in the crowd and I see like Boogie Street T-shirts, and that just blew my mind because they were all the designs were made on some Windows picture program in my brain, which I am not I couldn't paint anything if my life depended on it.
Well, obviously you are
but
good at it.
I got lucky. I got lucky. But that little goofy kids associated with it, I think it had more of a. They wanted to wear they wanted to feel like they belonged to something. And is that nature of fashion? Like, do you guys ever, and gals, do you ever think about why people buy what they do? Like, when you design something. I just met this morning with an artist we talked about who's going to be on the show, Mia Tarducci, and I asked her, like, when you paint, is it a purely personal output, or is there something in mind that kind of shapes that? Like you say, people want to wear.
Well, for example,
how do you craft the output?
For example, I cannot physically, I can't paint something that I don't like. I can't design clothing that is just for a purpose, but doesn't have any meaning to me. I can't physically do it. I can't even pay attention long enough to do it.
There are designers that obviously can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I could do it if they wanted me to, but I don't want to do that.
It loses the meaning for you.
Yeah, I can't do that.
So even in crafting this show, people said, hey, how are you going to pick your guests? I said, they have to be interesting to me. And they go, well, that might not apply to the public. I said, that's my name back there. And if I can't do it my own way and feel good about it, then I shouldn't be doing it. Does that make any sense? Can you relate to that? I mean, you have to own it, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not you, you couldn't put your name on something that you really didn't feel was yours.
Yeah, because you're an artist, that's why.
Well, I don't know. I never considered myself that, but I do. I can relate to the fact that if you're going to own up to something and call it your own, you have to be comfortable in your own skin. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot of people producing, whether it's on my end guitars years ago or with fashion, there's just a lot of garbage out there too. Does it drive you nuts? Do you see a lot of things that not disturb you, but you look and go, there was nothing thought into that. That was,
Yeah, I like usually openly criticize anybody,
No,
but I
you
laugh
would.
to myself. Anybody who designs like I do, like when you walk past anything in any store, you're always going to grab it and you're going to feel it and know the quality and know what they did and everything. Yeah.
You must drive your wife crazy. Then walking through a mall, right? There are still malls out there, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second. How's merchandising changed? You got into this business when the malls were like the thing, right?
Yeah.
At least for most of America, not the boutiques in L.A. and New York, obviously, but for most of America, malls were a thing.
You know, it's funny. For the longest time, and I still hold on to this a little bit. You know, talking about how everything is online now. You know, for the longest time, I would never even have a website or anything, and I still really don't. And the reason why is because this is how I always saw it. That if I know if I'm in New York and I'm talking to somebody and they want to look at me as being someone who's on the cutting edge, it always seemed to me that whenever I would put anything online, it would become dated almost instantly.
Like run of the mill.
Right. And like unless you have and a lot of people do have this nowadays, but unless you have people updating that website every day with different content and images and stuff, it feels old, and if you're supposedly a cutting edge designer, you can't feel old instantly like that, or you're dead. So
I get it. Yeah, and much of I think that archaic feel is with most websites you go to, because most aren't updated every day.
Right. Yeah.
And
like I can understand. Like I'm just I'm old and I'm fairly tech illiterate, but I can understand like Instagram and Facebook. Like I can understand people putting, always putting content and sort of putting their identity on there, because that's more relative. It's pretty quick, and it doesn't feel too dated on there.
But how do you feel we'll go down that slippery slope. How do you feel about social media? Because, you designed before it and you've been designing with it. So how do you feel about it?
I try to, like, in a way, kind of keep my distance. Like
I noticed that.
I put, a lot of my family and friends. I don't have a whole lot of friends or contacts on social media, and I will show my work, but it's always more in kind of a context of just sort of telling you who I am, and like and my family and friends, telling them kind of what I'm doing right now or stuff, or just things I like, and it's not. I don't.
You haven't monetized it, really.
No, exactly. That's what I
have a lot of
don't
respect
do.
for you because of that. I do.
I don't do that
because I know there's a lot of pandering to. And I think a lot of, you have your film stars, you have your music stars, and then you have your, believe it or not, social media influencers, they say, which people that have, for whatever reason, whatever they've done, sometimes, rather racy or inappropriate things, generally speaking, they become quote-unquote famous on there. And then but a lot of companies will try to use that influence, whether the influence is actually legitimate or not. I mean, there's a big question in that. It really...
Yeah, it's hard to say because it's slightly out of my domain, but I can understand it. Like, I can understand if someone has millions of followers and they're going to buy what they kind of show them or tell them to buy. Of course I get that. I'm not dumb. It's just slightly out of my realm. I don't do that. Luckily enough, I've had times where I've done things that were very mass-produced, but most of my stuff is pretty singular and for high-end stuff, so I don't worry about it.
That's almost like a safe market to a degree, because that has its own clientele. Would you agree? I mean, I always felt like, in a different way, my higher-end clients that would buy the $3,000 to $7,000 to $10,000 guitars, that's the taste they have, and that's the income level that they are. So I knew that they were there. I had to make sure my quality was good, and I was interesting there. But it just was different than the mid-level and the low-end products. And did I cater to them? Yeah, I definitely did. I will tell you, more of my mental input went into those because of the cost and how the intricacy of it all. And I'm guessing it's probably the same thing with you to a great degree too.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, are you still like a Siegel out there? Siegel has clothes out there right now of yours. Are you? What brands are you using? So is it still Jet? Is it under your own name?
It's Big Chief. I do mostly right now at this point. I'm doing almost all what they call private label designing.
Yeah, so what is that?
What's
that mean? What's that mean? I know we didn't.
Private label is, say, if like a store, they want to put out a a brand that's their store brand, but then they hire somebody like me to actually come in and design it for them.
So it sells.
And they just
So it looks great.
Exactly.
So do you feel like you've earned that right? I mean, you're at the point now where you've done your thing.
Yeah.
And this is not a gravy train, but this is a revenue stream that you've now earned.
Yeah.
And you're taking advantage.
Yeah,
of it.
and it's nice that kind of famous stores would like you to do private label.
No
work
question.
for them.
And there's probably a lot of that going on. Then probably would surprise most of us to know.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what happened? What's going on with the malls? Why do you think people are just not going for that pure? First off, there's instant gratification when you go buy something in a store, and I think that we are in society with a lot of instant gratification needs. It seems, but is it laziness?
I think you got it because you wouldn't think. Like my wife says all the time, she's like, "How can people not go to the store and actually try stuff on, or see it in person?" But I guess it's just overwhelming numbers, and brick and mortar. It's incredible the changes I've seen as far as people going away from brick and mortar.
I can't imagine. I mean, just. And the malls are all, from what I understand, and most malls, regardless of what part of the country, are struggling right now.
Yeah.
How's the big retail? Like, how's New York shopping? How's LA shopping? Now, granted, that ultra high end is always going to be there.
Right.
But are they struggling as well too? I mean, how's Barney's doing?
Well, they're doing really good. They it's like you said, they're almost like a larger high end boutique.
Right. Like Nordstrom's isn't going anywhere.
Right.
I get that.
Yeah, and they'll always have their own market. But yeah, there are tons of other stores that if they were, say, like smaller chains, a lot of them are really going away.
And it's funny if you go into Buckle now and you don't see you see something you want and they don't have it, they go right to online to order it to you. So they're trying to incorporate the online business, I guess, with their walk-in experience to a degree. And
like I was just talking with one of my partners a couple of days ago, and they're all, like so many of the small manufacturers that I used to work with, they're all being put out of business like by Amazon. And that was another reason why that was another reason why when I was younger and had higher standards, I wouldn't sell to Barney's, was because not Barney's, Walmart, was because they were putting all small businesses out of business.
Right.
And they've changed that a little bit.
Yeah.
But
they're supposed to be
now
a little more community
Amazon's
friendly. Absolutely. And now Walmart's got it. Walmart, I think, is feeling the threat of Amazon, so they're trying to compete on that level too.
Yeah. And they're definitely more concerned with quality than they were.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Mm-hmm. Amazon or Walmart is. I was thinking to myself, hopefully no one from Walmart listens to this, but I wish people could. Walmart is a trip. When you go to Arkansas, where Walmart's home office is, they own not the town, all the towns around them.
Yeah, I'm aware.
They own everybody. They own the politicians. I met with when I first started selling, when we were working on if we were going to work together or not. I had lunch with the senator there, and
that's amazing.
They're owned by Walmart.
It's. Yeah, well, that family's got a lot of power. That family's got a lot of power.
It's a trip.
And that happened before Amazon. They were the retail giant. I mean, and that's and Amazon's a whole other thing where, I mean, I don't even really understand Amazon, and I'm glad that I was kind of out of the guitar business when Amazon really has been, because the last 5 years Amazon's really just taken over.
Yeah.
They were a concern up until that point, but I just don't even understand where. I guess they'll actually house inventory for a while. I mean, Amazon has their own facility, so they're actually, like, if I made XYZ product and I didn't want to store it somewhere, I could actually contract with Amazon where they would house my product and ship it for me for a fee. Naturally, I think. Yeah. So they're in the warehousing too now. I think.
I don't think I've ever actually had anything sell on Amazon. I don't think, but I mean, maybe,
but
I don't know that I know of. Yeah, I don't even know how it works.
I know the whole country is using it, and I think they've streamlined the customer experience too, where we want immediate gratification and so forth. I just think that I feel happy for you that you didn't have to worry so much about the darn the social media. You had already made your mark, and so when social media came, you could use it where you wanted it to, and you were able to not to. So if you're a young designer today, I mean, social media is almost a must. You're going to have to somehow grab a hold of that elephant and figure it out. So, James, talk a little bit about this mentoring. Is it a mentoring program, or is it just maybe?
Yeah, I wouldn't really
adding some guidance, maybe.
Yeah, it doesn't really have a lot of formality, but I've had over the last couple of years occasionally. New young designers will just write me and ask if I can give any advice. So I just started doing it periodically. I'll meet young designers just out for coffee, kind of a grassroots thing.
Sure.
Just to help if I can. Just to kind of, because I think a lot of designers that I've noticed over the years, they'll kind of have this dream of wanting to design, but they don't really quite know how that works in the real world. Like they don't know how to necessarily make contact with a manufacturer. They need to have a factory to help them make the things if it's going to be widely distributed, and just sort of how to navigate that whole world, like in the real world. I think of myself as there are a lot of designers out there who make a lot of stuff, and they might even just make it at home or in a small shop or something. But I'm more of like a sort of a blue collar designer. Like I call myself a working designer because I really I work. I have high output, and it's more like nuts and bolts. I'm not super couture high-end designer necessarily. I like to do it for myself, for just for personal reward, just like I like making a painting. But I'm more of a working
do you feel that this is part of the whole giving back thing? Do you feel because it's funny when you talk to those who have success in the arts, there's something that swells in them. I've heard it many, many times that it's time to give back. I've made my mark, and everybody has helped to some degree when you start. I mean, you probably can look back and see some influencers in your career as well too.
And it's nice to just help people to not have to trip over the same mistakes that you made, and see if I can help get them along a little bit further.
So when you started this, because you were kind of nudged into it initially, right? So who were the designers that you admired, whether it was when you started or years when you were buying clothes when you were younger?
Actually, when I first started, I don't think I knew anything about design.
Really?
So I sort of just went with what I felt. But then eventually I noticed designers that I had a lot in common with, or I wanted to emulate. I really liked a lot of things at J. Crew. It was very similar to things I was doing, and I've even helped with some things at J. Crew.
Right.
And Ralph Lauren, like everybody knows Ralph Lauren, but that is just exactly what I've always liked. It's very timeless. It's based in Americana. It's America, and it like unabashedly so. But I really like it a lot.
Does that company look a lot different now? I mean, Ralph himself is kind of retired now, right? The family has the company.
Yeah, I don't really know. It's been several years since I helped with design with Ralph Lauren, so I don't really know the inner workings too much right now. But,
is it?
But I feel like they've very much, because I felt like there was a time maybe 20 years ago where they might have been on the verge of really sort of selling out too.
Really?
But I feel like they pulled it back a little bit, and
I've noticed
they've
that
kept
myself.
the integrity. I feel like they've consciously built towards getting that integrity back. And
one of the things I saw initially too was their clothes were being worn in a very ultra casual style. And I remember when they took the polo horse and the polo player and they blew it up real big, and I went through a period of going like, that's not the Calvin Klein, or I'm sorry, that's not the Ralph Lauren I remember. And it seems like there has been kind of a change in back to the more classic styles and cuts, and I think that's where they made their money. I just find it amazing because as a layman just looking at fashion, it's they were almost minting money for a long period. Those staple shirts that I paid $52.50 are now like $92.50. But the same style, it's the same shirt.
That's kind of a nice groove to be in, huh?
Could you imagine that recurring revenue stream
nice
there?
Job,
I mean, that's just, but sometimes the colors will change and colors go in and out. I mean, how does, I guess just being an observer of fashion, it's got to be hard to stay on the top, like stay on the cusp of what's quote unquote in. Is it usually style and cut, or is it more colors? Or is it a combination of both?
Well, colors is definitely something that's every season. You definitely are changing, and colors are a huge thing as far as being talented in recognizing trends. And actually, it sounds kind of silly, but there's a there's a publication that pretty much everyone in my business reads. It's called the Apparel News.
Okay.
And I was so proud of myself a couple years ago. They actually had an article and they actually quoted me on what was going to be the color of the year. And this was I guess like 3 or 4 years ago. And I remember I told them that it was going to be Mykonos blue. It was going to be the color of the color of the sea in Greece. And they quoted me, and it was eventually called the color of the year by have you ever heard of Pantone?
Oh,
Pantone colors.
I'm very familiar. I work with our painters over here. That Pantone was the de facto standard for shades. Yeah, and there's numbering system and all that, right? Yeah. So what was the name of that blue?
Mykonos blue. Yeah, it was cool.
That was you, though.
I was so proud of myself.
I can imagine so. So what's on the horizon here? Are you still going to do fashion shows here in town? Are you still going to be in New York? Are you still going to L.A.? What's
well, I do.
You do a lot of charity work too with that.
Yeah, the shows that I've been doing here in Pittsburgh, well, really any type of like a fashion show, I've only done them for charity. We don't make any money whatsoever.
Right.
And that's been just how I'd mentioned earlier. I'm not necessarily a couture designer. I've designed some high-end pieces and I try to experiment here and there in my lines with doing some more couture stuff. But this is more for just expression, almost like I'm making a painting. And really I started doing it just to prove to myself that I could design something really, really nice. And these shows have been kind of an outlet for that too, for me to get to design these couture pieces and have girls on the runway wearing them.
Well, and your good friend Diane has been instrumental in helping coordinate.
Yeah,
that,
our mutual friend Diane. She's amazing. She helps me with so much, especially with those shows and everything. She's really kind of the heart and soul of those shows.
Yeah, so you took a couple years ago, you took a bowling alley, right?
Yeah, we did it 2 years in a row, and I'm so glad that I get to talk to you about this because you try not to ever get caught up in social media. Like if anyone said, like I hate how everyone is trying to like pick a fight and be confrontational and stuff. And I don't do that at all. I don't get involved in that stuff at all.
Life's too short.
Yeah, and also too, I wish if there's one thing I try to give young people advice to is, if you're doing that stuff online, all of these stores that you're trying to sell to and stuff, they're looking at your pages, they're looking at all that stuff.
That's lost.
I don't understand why people don't try to take a little bit of a higher ground. That they're just, it's not very smart.
A lot of negativity.
Yeah, it's not smart to do that because these stores, I mean, if you're somebody like me who sells to a lot of stores, I'm certainly not going to put anything online where I'm having some drama, some fight with some little person, that doesn't mean anything and screw up, one of my big stores or whatever.
Right. So you're saying there was an element of that to happen with the
with the show. And
what happened? Really?
So I'd like to straighten that out now.
Yeah, let's get that. That's why you're here, James.
It's funny when I came up with the idea of doing this, I thought, well, first of all, the guy who owned the bowling alley, his name is Jeffrey Park, and he's really great guy, super charitable guy.
Right.
And we had the same vision. I think that I wanted to do the opposite of a fashion show. I wanted to do the anti-fashion show fashion show. So I wanted to do a little rock and roll show. And I thought, how cool would it be to be in a bowling alley?
Right.
I thought, it could be a rock and roll club. We could have we had live music, live rock and roll, and something else. I think that everybody who has been involved with the shows, the models and designers and everything, would probably back me up on this. That I told everyone, I just want you to have fun. This is not because fashion can be very catty and competitive and stabbing each other in the back, and that is not what I do. I don't pressure the models. I don't pressure anybody. I want it to just be fun, rock and roll, and we sold it out 2 years in a row, and it was it was in all the papers and lots of magazine articles, so I think it was a pretty big success, and it was a lot of fun.
No doubt.
My buddy, he had to move on from that business and close down the bowling alley.
Oh my!
So now we're going to do something different.
You can't let that hat out of the bag yet.
Well, I have two different things I want to do.
Okay.
One is that I'm going to do this. My wife might be listening. I shouldn't talk because I wanted to do something special for her, but I wanted to possibly include a fashion show, and it is.
Sure.
I want to go to an old roller skating rink, and I want to have like a roller disco boogie party.
There's one on Neville Island over across the
That's where I was going to go. Yeah, I haven't gone over there yet. I called them to talk to them about it, but I haven't gone over to see it yet. I wanted to do it over there on Neville Island. I wanted to have like a cool 1960s roller boogie party over there in fashion. Cool. And then the other one I want to do, Diane's been helping me with. We've been planning this for a couple of years, actually. And it's so much. There's moving parts we have to get in order. But have you ever seen during World War II they would have what's called hangar dances?
Oh yeah.
And they would have the big airplane hangar, and they would have the soldiers well, anyways, years ago, I went to a hangar dance, and they had a B-17 bomber was there, and they had Jeeps, and everybody was dressed in period costume. I was like, oh my God, I have to do that and do a fashion show with that. That's very cool. So Diane and I, we went to the airport, and there are certain times of the year that the old bomber planes are here.
Right.
So we're going to try to coordinate to have one of the
old... That's going to be a lot of moving parts. 1940s
hangar with B-17 bomber there, and we're going to have a big band. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, and WQED had expressed interest to maybe film it, maybe make it part of a TV show. And so that'll be cool.
That sounds like a heck of a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. What do you love about Pittsburgh? Besides that it's home.
I love that it's I love the tradition of it. Like I know I'm getting older, but I think even with the incredible development and all the, it's so cutting edge fast forward now with Amazon and Google and everything else, and all the places, all the neighborhoods being redeveloped. But I love tradition, and I don't feel like Pittsburgh. Something that's so cool about Pittsburgh is I could not believe, like, when I went to like the Academy Awards and stuff, everybody knows someone from Pittsburgh. Everybody has a connection to Pittsburgh. Oh my God, every single movie star I would talk to, I'd say, oh, I'm from Pittsburgh. You're from Pittsburgh. My brother-in-law is from Pittsburgh, or my wife's from Pittsburgh. It's awesome. Yeah, everybody. And also too, it was funny when I first started designing, people used to tell me when I used to go to these big to-dos in New York or LA, they would say, don't tell anybody you're from Pittsburgh. Like my partners would even say that. They would say, don't tell anybody you're from Pittsburgh. Say you're from New York.
What?
And now it's the opposite. Like I wouldn't do that anyway. I would tell people I was from Pittsburgh. But now it's the opposite. People think Pittsburgh is very cool. Now it's cool. It's even cool, at the Grammy Awards or whatever. It's different. Yeah.
No, I think the thing about Pittsburgh that I love, and obviously I'm a realtor that's my main gig, but seeing the older areas of town be redeveloped. I mean, Lawrenceville. 25 years ago, I worked down there, and I quickly drove through Lawrenceville to get to Bloomfield. I didn't want to stay in Lawrenceville very long, and now that everything's just completely changing. So there's a little sadness there, because the town is changing, but it's changing in that aspect. It's changing in a good way.
Yeah,
wouldn't you agree? I mean, these areas that were in rough condition are being really renovated, and it's bringing fresh ideas in.
Isn't it funny that you don't know how to feel though? Because it's like you don't want to say like, no, I liked when Lawrenceville was dangerous, and you'd get killed walking through there. But it's like, you know what I mean? It's like you don't want to be like anti-progress.
No,
but
I know. It's a slippery slope, isn't it?
But you want that old neighborhood kind of.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as to what you remember and what, there's a romantic element of the memories of Pittsburgh too. And I was a budding photographer. I remember when I was in high school and we were going and they're installing the subway. It was 81 maybe. Mm-hmm. And I took this camera on loan from the school, and I went up and I shot all these pictures of the subway being built and the iron workers working and just like, really just odd things. And I look back on that, like there was like, wow, I kind of had a vision about that. But I look back on that and I say, oh my gosh, look where the town is now, where the city is, and where it was. I kind of liked it back then. Mm-hmm. Jenkins Arcade, and I used to like to meet under the Kaufman's Clock, right? That was it just seems like you lose a little bit with progress, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's just part of getting older, and obviously you don't want to stand in the way of progress. But you must have felt a little bit of that when you went from Three River State in the PNC Park. That had to be a huge because to me, PNC, as beautiful as it was, didn't feel like baseball to me. Mm-hmm. It's for a couple of years because I had spent my whole life going to see Three River Stadium, which was an inferior facility. I get it. And even like when they put the stadium in for the Steelers, that took a while for me to adjust to that too. I still think, You're a design guy. What's your thoughts on Heinz Field?
I think it's kind of crappy.
It's ungodly to me.
Me too.
The choice of yellow seats, is it just me, or that probably wasn't a good optic, because when people aren't there, it's like the empty seats are.
And I hate how that gold just keeps changing, doesn't it? It gets like poppier and poppier and greener and greener. It's like, I don't want green gold. I like the old mustard gold myself.
Yeah, me too. Well, Pitt keeps changing. Pitt University keeps changing all their logos from year to year.
I wish Pitt would go back to the mustard rather than that.
I think this year they're supposed to.
I saw pictures,
and it wasn't the same. Yeah, yellow. It wasn't the same. And it's a tough struggle, because
like Wiz Khalifa with the black and yellow. It's like, it's not yellow.
It's not black.
Gold.
Yeah. Well, you can't. That's that generation. It's just but you know what? I don't want. It's so funny. I don't know how you feel about this, but do you ever struggle? Because we're both middle-aged men, we are. Do you ever struggle, and when you're talking with your kids or while your kids were growing up, there was those moments you say, I don't want to be like my dad was? Mm-hmm. Because the one point I want to share with you was, for me, it was always about music, and whether it was Kiss or even like the Sex Pistols, or my parents were horrified, and that's what made it so great. Right? Yeah. so I here we all these years, and I got lucky enough to actually have for a short period of time work in that environment, and I don't want to be, and I sometimes I see some of the songs that are on my children's playlist on their iPhone. There's some, especially my daughter. I'm like,
God, I know.
You want to kind of like, as a parent, reach in there and censor some of that, but at the same time, do you ever fight yourself? Say, I don't want to be like my folks.
Yeah. Oh my God, my daughter. Wiz Khalifa asked my daughter to be in one of his videos.
Oh my gosh.
My daughter hated me. I was like, absolutely not. You're not going to be in that video. Are you kidding me?
No, but that's what I mean. So it's like it really, I was so angry with my parents for being so strict about the things that were going to enter my life at that time. You don't understand, Dad, and Mom, you don't understand. It's not fair. And then you fast forward 25, 30 years, and you're in the same position. And society is even more abrasive and a little raunchy as opposed to what we put them through, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you ever have those moments where you didn't want to be your folks? Parenting wise?
I try to concentrate though on when I was younger, I was very kind of strict like that and stuff. Now I just try to concentrate on trying to embarrass them as much as I possibly can. I do a good job at it too.
That's an art. I've not perfected that yet. Maybe you can give me some tips on that, because I have not perfected that yet. And you're a grandfather.
Yeah.
A beautiful grandchild.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Granddaughter Avery.
Oh my gosh.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's the apple of your eye.
Yeah.
That I picked up for sure.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, I've yet to experience that. And no hurry.
Yeah. Just
no hurry.
No hurry, but it is awesome.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. So does everything that happens to you change how you approach your work? I mean, I don't know how even to say it.
I think I've always I think I figured out fairly early on that the most important thing that I do on this earth is trying to be a parent, trying to be a good parent or a good grandparent.
Right.
So I think I've always tried to be fairly good as far as balancing that and like not taking my work too seriously. So yeah, I've never let it totally take over, and I could see designers doing that too.
I can imagine. All encompassing.
Totally, yeah. But kids have always been such a part of my life that I've sort of kept that tether, stayed the ground.
Before we close this down, we didn't touch on your art much, and you just had you and your son Connor. That must have been very rewarding.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah,
and I missed. I want to come to that next one.
Yeah,
for sure.
My son Chris. I thought it was cool because we do such different stuff. Like my stuff is very like kind of like surface level poppy, like it doesn't have any meaning.
He had a couple interesting, like dark and disturbing.
Yeah, dark and disturbing.
I don't know if I should like this or
be
afraid.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my stuff's all like poppy Saturday morning cartoon stuff, and his stuff is like deep, dark.
Yeah.
But you know what though? People got it though. Like there was a really nice lady who was at our show who was an art teacher at Carnegie Mellon,
right? And
she loved his stuff. She was like, "Oh, this stuff is
really
good." Yeah, she's it was amazing, and it was very, very, very rewarding. Like I never thought of myself as like a real artist. Like I just do it as a hobby, as something that's fun. But it was great. It was great to like do it with my son and try to promote him a little bit. And
I can't even imagine. So if someone was to tell you 35 years ago, 30 years ago, as you were sitting in Carnegie Mellon and say, this is your future, you're going to do this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and this is where you're going to be at 55, 50 years old, would you believe them?
Oh my gosh, no.
Right.
I think I had equal chance to be a homeless bum as I have to do this.
You stole my line, right? Because I look back on my life now and I say, wow. And I guess for most people, it's almost impossible to say I could never predicted this, but I found myself in an amazing place. And even here today, sitting in front of you, this is an honor for me, sir. This has been
me too.
This is come on. I mean, it means a lot to me that you would do this show. It really does. And life's been great, and it's certainly been great for you. And I want to thank you for coming in here.
Yeah, I love it.
Great.
It was awesome.
Thank you, my friend.
So nice
salute,
to be here.
red stripe salute here.
Yeah.
There you go. That's right. James Houk, Mr. Pittsburgh. And by the way, one last thing. This man had his own day in the city of Pittsburgh declared by city council. I don't miss much, pal.
That's right. I did.
I know you won't talk about it, but I'm going to bring it up and make you
believe
talk
me,
about it.
it's on September 22nd. Believe me, I let everybody know every
James
September
Houk Day
22nd.
in Pittsburgh. Yeah,
James
that's
Houk
a heck
Day.
of an honor, huh?
Yes.
God
That's
bless
crazy.
you.
How the
God
hell
bless you.
How did that happen? That's ridiculous.
It happened because you're awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate
you.
it. All right, we're
Thanks.
going to do this again. You come back, see me?
Yeah,
All right,
sure.
we're going to do it
Anytime.
again.
Okay.
Thank you all for listening.